I love, because I've been thinking, it's incredible how you and I are talking today, and for days I have the words in my head of, and is thinking about the Tao, when he says the Tao that you can name is not the Tao.
Mm-hmm.
And when I even talk about this kind of experience, is always feeling that limitation of how can I even put into words something that doesn't have name, something that cannot be described.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Qing, and I have an incredible guest here today that is taking it from a conceptual inner working and understanding of her natural relationship with pure source water, the ocean, the affinity that drives her very realization of how she got to where she is today, and morphs that into something that was more from a, I would say, academic sort of perspective to an organic realization of pure consciousness. I want to welcome Ingrid I just tongue twisted that. Ingrid Honkala.
Perfect.
Welcome, friend.
Thank you so much, Sam, for having me here. This is just an honor, a very big honor.
It's really, really beautiful. There's nothing more fulfilling for me and creating a wholeness is when I get to share these experiences with the audience and share space with an incredible being like yourself. Why don't we go into just sharing your backstory leading up to this conversation today, a little bit more of an understanding of who you are, and yes, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, there's a lot that happened that guided me to where I am today, as you know. But I would just say that probably all this started, or the possibility to open that door and keep it, let's call it semi-open, because there's so much work that needs to be done, but was having a near-death experience when I was close to 3 years old. And the way this happened is that I was born in Bogota, Colombia, where I was living with my parents and my sisters, and they will go to work very early every day, and they will leave us at the care of a maid. And she was a lady that when my parents were not around, she didn't really pay much attention to us. And one morning they left, and she wasn't there to check on us, on my oldest sister and I. She was close to 4. We decided, let's go play in the patio. We went to the patio, we found a ball and decided to play cash across a tank that was in the patio. But the problem of this situation is that tank was a very deep tank. The purpose of this tank was to collect water for hand washing clothes. Back then, we didn't have the washing machine. So this tank held about 900 gallons of water. And it was a tall tank. So my sister and I grabbed a couple of stools, climbed the tank. We were doing everything we did not supposed to do. But no one is watching. Just go have fun. And then she sat on the surface for scrubbing, so she was a little bit safer. I went to the other side of the tank, and it was a thin edge. And I bent my legs, was there, but it was leaning very precariously in this tank. And then she dropped the ball. She didn't apply enough force. It fell on the water. And then I leaned forward thinking, I can grab the ball. I lost my balance and fell in the tank. The first thing was the feeling of the water being frigid cold. People think that because I'm from Colombia, I come from hot weather country, but Bogota is very high up in the Andes. So the temperature in this water was probably like 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So the first feeling is that water being so cold that it almost like shook me. And from there, it was that sense of horror because I realized why I cannot breathe. I never had been in a pool, never had been with my head underwater. I did not know that if you fall in the water, you drown. So is this absolute horror why I cannot breathe? Trying to escape from this tank. I didn't know how to swim and I sank in the tank. And then it came the incredible moment in which going from that state of absolute horror in just a blink is just like absolute peace, calm, serenity. I didn't know what happened, but I didn't have to escape from the tank. I didn't have to breathe. I didn't have to go anywhere. It was just like, oh, this just feels incredibly good. It was, imagine, like the whole heaviness of everything was gone. It was like, you're completely free. And then it came, I always, people always ask me, son, how can you remember this if you were so young? And I always have to bring the word contrast. I said, because this experience was full of contrast. First thing, imagine the trauma of drowning. Second, and that complete contrast of like horror and peace. I mean, like, wow, this was incredible. Now, the other thing, this tank was a dark surface, a dark space. It had a roof. It was entirely made of cement. It was deep and it was very dark. So the last thing I saw with my eyes open, I remember also that fear of this, the darkness of this space. And the last thing I captured was this darkness. And the moment I entered into this peace, light. It was like a light that came from below. And that it was like a soft light, but it was able to illuminate my whole watery surroundings. So I remember my first words were, now there is light. The other contrast, I live in a very noisy house. It was always noise. And the last thing I heard on top of that, that there was always noise, was my heart beating very loud. And I could hear it so loud. Like, imagine when you're in this really panicky moment and your heart is doing boom, 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 and I could hear it in my head. And I'm hearing my heart beating so hard when gone. When I entered in the state of peace, it was like, and that silence was so deep and so profound that even after my near-death experience and for years, I craved that silence. And it's what I call the silence behind the silence. It's that silence with peace and serenity and calmness. And so later in my life, I will hide in closets and chapels under the bed. I was
Looking for it, right?
looking for it. I wanted it. And I was like, why I cannot find it?
Well, you know, within Taoism, we're very clear on this. It's called the Wu Ji. It's the stillness between the breath in and the breath out. Between yin and yang resides the stillness, the pure consciousness, the awakening.
You
And
just
so,
you say that, and my whole system just.
oh, you're vibrating. Absolutely, I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, this is incredible.
I will warn you, I've been coined the aura dipper too. So I do enjoy sampling the energies, and like
Oh,
that realization is a consciousness shift for you, just in of itself.
it's
It-
amazing because I'm talking with you and I'm feeling what you are feeling.
mhm.
It's
Yeah.
like, even that makes it even I would just say more profound. It vibrates pretty strongly.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like feeling you, feeling me.
And
This is incredible.
that's the power of all things. When you attune yourself, it's
Yes.
like that realization is evident everywhere. And the
Yeah.
ability to access that is instantaneous.
That's when we know we're all connected. We're more connected than we think we are. So this is just, and it's just a matter of open that connection, let that fluidity happen. But to keep going with the story, once I am in this state of seeing the light, I started to see bubbles, and the bubbles were surrounded by light. And you made me think about something as I'm sharing years later, when I thought about this whole experience happening in water. I thought about what the ritual of purification is.
Well, you return back to where you started, right?
Rebirth.
So, within Taoism, we train people in what we call primordial breathing, which is embryonic breathing. So you're breathing from consciousness. And that's why that's so powerful for you. And through your near death experience or death experience, this realization is so evident. And that your affinity with water in of itself is completely transparent right now. I mean,
Yes. Oh, this is incredible. I love it because we can even go deeper into all these, and because it's how can we share with people the depthness of. I always say it's not the experience, but the purpose behind the experience. What is the depthness in all these? And then people, when they feel that essence of things, they can actually feel the transmission of this, let's call it in this case a story, or the teaching, or what is to come from it, and they can, I guess, experience it or bring it to experience it in themselves. But what happened next is when I started to see these bubbles that were shining with light, I started to chase the bubbles. I just thought, this is fun. And then the moment I turned around to chase the bubbles, I saw a body in the water. And when I saw the body in the water, there was something that I just only shared recently with someone, because it just, sometimes you meet someone that brings a subject and now you share, and there was something interesting there. And when I saw the eyes open, it was that clarity of there's no life in that body. The eyes were empty because the eyes were open. And one thing that caught my attention from the whole scene was the eyes open, staring, looking at nothing. There was nothing there. And it was that sense of like, oh, and it was that now feeling of familiarity. This already happened many times before. So it wasn't nothing like, oh, I had to be afraid or really too much into it. It was just like, oh, and I knew it like, remember in that sense of like, oh, that's a shell, like that's a shell. There was nothing now in that body. And then there was, at that moment, it comes the other contrast that is so important in this experience, and is that I was born as a very sick child. And I always say to people, some people may think, oh, being a child, being born sick, that's just so terrible. And I said, in my experience, at least that was needed. Because if I was born as a very healthy child and living in an environment of all these greatness and love. My house was a very difficult also environment. My parents were forced to marry. It was difficult. The whole situation was hard. And then I think if everything would have been harmonious and my health would have been perfect, I would not have known the difference. Probably die and I'm still in the same harmony. But because that wasn't the case, almost for 3 years, I didn't even know anything other than feeling sick. That was my state of the body. So at this moment that I am in the state of absolute well-being, what do you think I did? I looked at the body. I'm like, and I had that also clarity to, I knew I could make the decision and say, I'm not going back into that body. And I turned around and I left the body behind. And then the moment I turned, I started to see flowers. And the flowers were blooming from nowhere. And this is also interesting because even the sense of dimension was gone, because now imagine the size of a flower, but now these flowers were picking me up. And now I didn't even think at that moment anything like that. I thought about later, but I was just trying to think about the whole thing, but I was picked by the flowers and now I was being carried. And that was that sense. And I put the analogies like going back to the womb, where you don't have to do anything. You're just being done.
As we put it within Taoism, done by the Tao.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, yes. And I want to bring something because I think I probably will forget, but we can go deeper later. But we will talk about it that later in my life, I started to communicate with beings of light. But I want to bring something, and is that I ask later in my life, what was the light? What was the light that I saw? And the answer was beautiful, because I thought it was a light outside of myself. And they said, no, that was your light. That was you, your own light. So these things are incredible. So now that I am floating in these flowers in the state of, this is always difficult to convey in words, because I always have to use the word of bliss or the word of this or the word of that, but in reality there's no words. We have to put it in some words. But even in that state, I'm just like being, just being. And then when I'm in that state of, let's call it being, bliss, I, in a blink like that, I appear in the maid room. And then now I'm looking at the maid from above, like I'm floating and I'm looking at her from above. And I'm like, oh, that's Maria. And Maria was listening to soap operas in the radio. This is so clear in my head that I can even remember the soap opera she was listening in the radio. And then at that moment, because Maria was completely unaware, in another blink like that, I appear in my mom's path. And this is probably the part that is important to use to validate the story, because people need that validation of like, is this actually true? Did you actually drown? How long it was? I went to meet my mom. And my mom, she didn't have a car. She was out of the house. She was walking. And she was close to her bus stop when I appeared above her. And then I looked at her and I just like, oh, that's mom. The moment I said these words, and my mom stopped. She did not hesitate. She did not. And I always say to people that the urge to go to work at that moment should have been very high, because she just had got a new job. And our inner is going to say, no, you have to be responsible and go to your job. No, she stopped. And she knew that something was happening at home. But there's two things I have to say about my mom. She was very intuitive, but she also listened to that intuition. And she turned around and started to run back home. And when she's running, I looked at her and I'm like, I wonder why she's running. And then she's running, but I changed I stopped looking at her because at the end of the road there was a dog, and I loved animals. I just adore animals. And the moment I saw the dog, I'm with the dog. So it's like the immediate moment of that desire, I am there. I'm like, whoa, this is good. And then I changed my perception and I saw a park. And the moment I see the park, I am in the park. I'm like, whoa, this is pretty cool. And I started to play. And I'm having fun playing this game of going places. I say people, time and space just vanish. This thing that we know as time of space constriction was gone. And then I could be anywhere, anytime. And it's when in another flash like that, in a blink, I am in a realm that was made of pure, intense, shiny light. And again, it was, it was the second sense of like, but this one even deeper. It's the sense of like, I am home. I am home. So like for the 3 years of my life, it was like, oh, this was just, oh God. And then it was that sense that I was being welcome, that I wasn't alone. I didn't see anybody, but I was not alone. And I said, it's like when you get home, you probably don't have to see right there that people are there, but people are in the home, and then you welcome and you embrace, and you can take your backpack and all your stuff and just, oh, this is good. And then this is the part that is also amazing. Like, although I saw my body in the water, up to this point, I didn't have the realization that that was not me. There was still a sense of perceiving, sensing that that was me. I don't know. It's hard because I even saw the body out, but I was still identified, I guess. And it was at this moment when I had that clarity. I am not that. I'm not that. I'm not that persona. I'm not that. And it's when I realize myself as the light, as a being of light. And it's when I started to feel that sense of dissolving, expanding, like becoming like a sense of feeling that oneness with everything. But this didn't end there, because up to this point, I was still having a sense of, I just call it self, I guess, still some kind of identification with something. But even this vanished. And it's when I enter what I call the sense of nothing. Some people call it non-self, some others call it emptiness. I just call it nothingness. And to be able to give an analogy that someone shared with me, and I thought, yeah, this kind of, I can use this analogy. I said, because when I say nothing, people get scared. Like, what, nothing? Nothing. And I said, no, imagine that all you knew about yourself is a little box in the middle of a huge stadium. And all you know about you is that little box. And suddenly the box opened, and now you realize nothing, because it's nothing I thought I was, but everything. And it's that interconnection with everything.
This is the profound realization. One of my teachers, the Jade Emperor, which I channel, he reflects on this as the human's realization of all things. It's as simple as a grain of sand asking the beach, "What are we doing today?"
That's amazing. Yes.
And then when you truly realize that you are one with all things, then that has no place. That surge of energy you're experiencing right now, that attunement that we are having, is a realization of how powerful what you speak of, how powerful the recognition, the acknowledgement that I understand the frequency that you're operating in.
I even feel like at this point because it doesn't happen with everyone, because you work with different energies at the level of wherever we are vibrating in frequency. But as I'm talking with you, like my crown
Yeah, I
energy really open.
well, that's what I see. I mean, normally auras. That's basically that was one of my realizations of almost 30 years ago. Was my clairsenses turned on overnight as if it was a computer screen full of icons, and so everywhere I put my attention, intention, information, vivid colors, auras, all being realized. So it's very easy to ascertain or give someone what I define as a quick psychic reading of their mental, emotional, and physical state, because all the information is sitting there as you and I understand the power of that. And so, this is one of the things when it's not just the feeling, I see it oscillating in your physical body, the auric change and the transformation of those energies moving in and out of your field. It's really profound. And people ask me, well, how are you doing today? Well, it's good to be me. Everything that I experience this is what I immerse myself in every day. This is it. The
Yes.
expansion of consciousness for the human's realization of who they truly are. And this is just a profound thing. Listening to your connection, your realization, you're leading up to how profound the true nature of who you are. Now we're off to the races. Now magical things are now replicated and realized on a minute by minute basis. And that's the offering, as we put it in Taoism. Your gift is your offering, the present moment. It is a present. It's right now.
Yes, right now. And there's nothing else, which is the most beautiful thing of all. And then now we have to put names, and we have to identify with things, and we have to narrow things. And it's like when we are this vastness and this totality and complete abundance. But this is beautiful too, because it's just the journey of contrast to remember who we are. So we become narrow, so at some point we can remember, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. Then we can peel all those layers and go back to that truth that we are. And I love, because I've been thinking, it's incredible how you and I are talking today, and for days I have the words in my head of, and is thinking about the Tao, when he says the Tao that you can name is not the Tao.
Mm-hmm.
And when I even talk about this kind of experience, is always feeling that limitation of, how can I even put into words something that doesn't have name, something that cannot be described, something that, and sometimes it almost feel that I'm making it dirty. I don't know how to explain that. I'm lowering to words when it just doesn't have words. That's why the way I'm experiencing with you now is so beautiful, because it's like, how can we actually emanate it as light, as connection, and not just words.
And that's exactly what we're experiencing. And any of the OGs of the channel will experience this sensory perception. This is kind of like under the blanket of, people are always like, well, there's all these categories, psychic, medium, channel, healer, intuitive healer, medical intuitive, all these types of, there's just vast titles. And so, my journey and exploration is just about creating an awareness for anyone that enters my path, to realize the true nature of who they are, the power, the source of oneness. And then under that, all of a sudden you realize all these things are accessible at will.
Yes, and at
So
what?
at, at once. The sensory perception is nothing more than that. And so, the glimpse is what you speak of. It's like people get it and then they can never capture it again. And
Yes.
that's where they find someone like yourself or myself, where they're looking for a validation. They're looking for a way to get back. And I feel
Yes.
like this is also part of the movement of a lot of people needing this external force. And they sort of like, they're like, I can access this through mushrooms, DMT, all this stuff. I appreciate there's an entry point for everybody. I would say, having done this for many, many decades, unnecessary, because it gives them a glimpse once
Yeah.
more. And this is sort of like it's like a temporary awakening. And I've yet to come across anyone in my natural born life doing this that can maintain the consciousness that they obtain from these experiences, being, i.e., mushrooms, ayahuasca, all this kind of stuff. They get a taste, and then they find that the only way that they can obtain that is to continue to repeat it. There's nothing wrong with this. It's like I always tell people, humans are very simplistic, but they're habit based creatures. So whatever they start, they must finish, no matter what. If you're in a duality, if you're expressing yourself in this sort of construct, you will start something and want to finish it always. This is just the habit of being human. Yet when you start to realize that within Taoism, we look at it as a journey where there's two sides of a mountain. One is yin, one is yang. We move up the mountain to merge the two as one, realized as all things.
Yes.
That is the true nature of Taoism, and understanding that the convergence of everything as one. And so yin and yang is a representation of just before the merging of the realization of everything. And so the duality is this place that humans start with, and then they realize that, you can take your personality off. I teach people to take their personality, put it in the corner of the room and say, sit, okay, stay, don't move, and let's express our true self as
Yes.
one. And so
Yes.
that personality is just a reflection of the sum of their life experiences. Is it the truth? It is the truth for the journey of the personality, but it's not the true nature of the source of who they are. And so that's where people have that struggle. You mentioned this at the beginning. We may have talked about this off camera. It's like people's merging of this roller coaster of emotions. And I always tell people, your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions. And people are like, whoa, that. And you can identify with how people are either react or accept. There's sort of like only two things that take place within a duality when you empower someone with that very realization. Is they're either someone that wants to help you expand this realization, or control you with sort of more an authoritarian sort of behavior. And it's very evident. It's like, that's very dangerous. You can't tell people that they have that power. Or moreover, if I say to someone, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with, and they're like, oh, that's really scary. You don't want how that means anyone can create anything, and they can validate it for themselves. I'm like, yes. Oh, but that's very dangerous. If you tell someone that their truth is the only truth, but what about the truth? And I mean, well, that's where the question lies now, isn't it? What
Yeah,
is?
but yeah, what people don't also understand is when they touch the truth that they are, they've been transformed already. The moment you touch that truth, it's not polarized, it's not, you're connected with the whole of everything, and the whole of everything is you, and you are the whole of everything. So dangerous for who? I always say to people when they talk about the world, I said, whose world? The world of who? Because that's just the part of perception. I had these experiences of, in the Hindu teachings, they're called samadhi, or experiences of oneness, where like you say, I have, like, it even happened in my near death experience, but I was so little, I wasn't really aware of what was happening. But now, in the state of complete awareness, I have been able to, this happens spontaneously. You don't call it. Like, I could be opening the microwave and suddenly I am in that state, because this is not control. If it was of the mind, then it's not real.
I
This
will
happens.
I will interject a little bit, because within Taoism we have specific internal practices that give you that very thing that you touch on, the ability to access it at will.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, no. Yes, you can access. Yes, but what I mean, you can access at will. But what I mean, not from. It's a different kind of. It's not from the ego mind. What what I convey in this moment is, when this happened, is like I have had the opportunity to be able to see the mind. I have been able to be in
mm,
that state of complete oneness that happened. What I love about when it happens spontaneously is that there's not any interjection of the mind. Yeah, of course, when you're doing it in a practice where you're completely in that state of awareness, which I do it too. But when this is a
you
spontaneous,
like the little surprises.
is the presence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're like, "Oh,
when
this
the
is so
presence,
exciting." The
yeah,
boom. Yeah,
just
yeah.
happen. And now it's like, when it started to happen spontaneously, even at the beginning, like that, it would be the mind, it would come afterwards and say, "Oh, the mind needs to name things." So the mind will go, "Oh, this is what people call the now. How am I going to explain this?" And I am being aware of the mind talking, and the mind trying to describe it, and the mind, how am I going to share this?
Mhm. It
And I felt compassion. It was that sense of, oh, the mind is trying to give it a name. The mind is trying to explain it out there. So it's like,
it's so palpable, like within Nigong, which is basically definition inner power. It's like the infrastructure, the architecture of the energy centers. Moreover, and within Hinduism you might call it a chakra, we call it energy centers, more
mhm,
closely refined as dantians. So upper, middle, and lower dantian, and then you have the fraction variables that are the interconnection. Within the Taoists, we normally connect up to 108, and then beyond that, it's really unnecessary, but you could keep going. But at least 108. You start with 9 just to be more connected in a realization with the earth and the universe. And so this sort of like state is like where people speak of like OBEs, NDEs, astral projection, sleep paralysis, all this sort of very similar entry points of another state of consciousness. But it's like, now can you replicate that in a 3D reality? And when I say that, it's about affecting change, because it evokes your consciousness. So, for example, simple things like physical healing, which is a very low frequency sort of realization. So
mhm,
when you have a physical healing, I'm not sitting here, and this is where I would speak on or parallel with what Ingrid's saying, which is, I'm not sitting, like, for example, just the other night, my kids are playing, they're running around after each other, one trips and bumps themselves and they get a big lip, they fall to the ground, they get a big lip and it's bleeding and it's puffed up. It instantly reacted to the experience. And of course, I'm not sitting there looking at it going, oh my goodness, oh, are you okay? Is everything all right? I just connect as one. And it's like that is really in tune with that frequency instantly. Heal, 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 because I am the universe. And you watch this swelling disappear before your very eyes. That manifestation realization is instantaneous. It's not something we prepare ourselves to get up to, but that's just like the state of all things. Now, when you get there and you're repeatable in this sort of like groove, It's like a groove, and you're able to access that. And some people might look at it from a psychological, biological, physiological aspect, a neurological aspect of understanding how the brain sort of transmits a brain wave, a frequency that is gamma and above. Normally, when I train or express a transmission from that higher realm state of realization, I've measured my EEGs, and they're normally, I start at 40 and then I go up between 100 and 200 hertz. And so this is just transmission. I look like I'm sweating in a sauna. The information is coming out. It's realized, it's there. But this is a state that we can all access and stay in that state. Now, many years before this, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, it would be proclaimed from the psychological scientific community that it was unobtainable for someone to 2% of the population might access a gamma brainwave. That's just absolutely false in of itself. And that realization, bringing more indigenous practices like things that Taoists have been doing for thousands, tens of thousands of years, or you've referenced Hindu practices, so things that you're more familiar with. These are just realizations that people like Ingrid and myself have come to this attunement with the frequency. And one of my teachers, the Yellow Emperor, the Jade Emperor, the first realization of the Yellow Emperor, thousands of years ago, tens of thousands of years ago, he's the creator of what we identify as Chinese culture as we know it today. So he was the transmitter, transcriber of the universe, whispering to him to create this realization of Chinese medicine, Chinese culture, Chinese language, as we identify as Mandarin being the seventh generation of a transmutation of oracle bone reading 6 and 10, 20,000 years ago through Jade Empress realization. It's again this incredible, we're sharing in this surge of energy between the two of us because we're oscillating and we're validating each other. And it's so exciting because this is the true nature of all things. For the audience, this is another validation, this incredible experience that Ingrid had started her natural born life with, and now come to this realization of where she is on her journey, exploring and helping people come to that nature themselves through your own practices, through your teachings, how you help people come to that realization. It's so profound. It's like a shift of consciousness, and this word consciousness today within human history is now really sort of like more profound than ever before, even though, I channeled Bruce Lee. Well, Bruce Lee came to me several months ago when he was, on his 50th anniversary of his death. So he came in and it gave me a whole rundown of how he ended up his very short-lived existence in this like physical body. And so that was an interesting one that I put on my channel. But moreover is this understanding, when you get to that point, you're creating a frequency that is second to none. And that is replicating the gateway to opening of all things. And then you're able to like truly access this stuff. And I love the wonderment of, the universe reminding you, and Ingrid speaks on it. It's like just that, which we call Wu Wei, which is effortless action within Taoism. Effortless effort is this realization that you're experiencing where I'm not even contemplating, oh, look, I have my attention intention to be realized as the universe. The universe taps me on the shoulder and I'm just there. I'm like, whoa, this is it. And, you stay there. And this is a repeatable sort of like frequency that
Yeah.
we can obtain, What are
Yes.
your thoughts on that?
For me, there's I remember, just to give one of many, many times, but they just are so powerful. It's hard to use words, but even one day I'm about to get up in the morning, to get up on my bed, and the moment I put I touch the ground, one foot up, one touching the ground. And now I am like, and nothing is what we think that is something out there. Is like this, and it emanates. It's like, I have awakened one time in the bedroom in the middle of the night, and I was so big, son, so big, I could not fit in the bedroom. And I heard the words grandioso. But this day that I'm is pouring, and there's no judgment, there's no thought. This is hard when we say there's only presence, is a word that people, but it's only presence. There's no need of nothing else. It's pure presence. And this is coming so expansive, so huge from within that after I don't know how long, the mind came back. This is what people call love. This is what people call God. And the man, how am I going to explain this? And he goes with all the and I'm observing it. And he's like, wow. And again, I feel compassion for this aspect of how the consciousness manifests itself in all these ways. And in one of these experiences, when for a moment, the mind tried to explain, so it was given a teaching. So it was like, so now the mind was shown a ray of light, and the ray of light touched a prism. And when it touched the prism, it turned into trillions of colors. And he says, look, this is the play. This is the play of the light. And now you choose how you want to dance with these colors. And I'm like, wow. And there's nothing. It's really difficult. Again, when we say the now that can be named is not the Tao, is that same experience with
The
everything.
way that can be walked is not the way.
Not the way, exactly. So it's like, but when I try to convey these things and the mind trying to explain it, is like at the end is like, how can we just feel it? Even when later we can talk, when the beings of light started to communicate and talk with me, people say how they talk, how is the sound? No, is how does it feel? It is it is beyond that sense of words or senses, or the outer is very profound, and is I call it inner senses. I said the senses of the soul is more profound.
Well, yeah, it's just incredible because you honestly think that your sensory perception is dialed up. You really have, you personally, because I look at your aura, and that lung channel is still very stagnant. So that's a direct indication of sensory perception, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that completely dissolved would dial up what you're sensing. You want to sense even more. That is that channel, and that completely makes sense to me. Looking at the reflection of the story that you're reflecting on in your journey right now in your humanness, that is still an echoing story. When you speak on that, you must realize that has a thought, feeling, and an emotion, which when I describe it to people is the secret source of all things. That's just everything: thought, feeling, and emotion. And so how do you translate that into reality, what you perceive as reality? And so I always use the entry points of visual, audible experience, creating the kinesthetic charge that is the validation, which is just like you speak on. If I'm thinking, I am not knowing. If I'm feeling, I am knowing. So all of a sudden, you go from compartmentalizing the duality to oneness when you feel everything. This is your tuning fork. Your sensory perception is how you validate your reality. Is how
Mhm.
you validate your experience, your out of body experience. All these things that are taking place is still being registered within this tuning fork. Even though consciousness is all things, you're correlating it as the anchor. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yes, yes. And when I think like say when I'm listening, because I remember when I saw my body is already a few times that I have had this near death experience and many out of body experiences and experiences of the kind, and is that realization of, oh look, the body is not the ear, the hearing is not the eyes, is not, that's only the object of listening, but who is listening, what is the organ of listening, and who is listening. Because when I saw that body there with the eyes open, is like, yeah, the eyes is still the eyes, the brain is still the brain, but who's listening now? The body is not really doing, it's just a shell. So it's always that who is truly listening.
I always reflect on an epic moment within media many decades ago when Oprah just started her talk show, and she had on Deepak Chopra. And she's like, "Oh, I'm talking to the audience, and I want to welcome Deepak Chopra today." And she asked this question. She said, "So, Deepak, how are you?" And he said, "Well, my body's here, but I'm not." And she went right to a commercial break. We'll be right back in a few minutes, because 40 years ago, even though historically we've been experiencing this cycle of spirituality, atheism, religion, all this type of stuff has been cycling for thousands of years within the human timeline. This within the last 100 is a new realization from generation to generation. So when you and I speak on this stuff now, and it's almost like people seek it. When I started this stuff 30 years ago, most people would believe they're on the verge of a psychotic episode when they couldn't
Mhm.
find anyone to validate or understand the very
Yeah,
nature
I
of things.
couldn't talk to anybody. That's why for many years what was the way I did it? I had to at 19 ask the being, so like you have to let me pretty much. I say to people because they're like, how could you cut your connection with the being? So like I needed to be human like everybody else. It was the sense of like no one around me was getting it. And now I was doing my career as a scientist. I was doing this, I was doing that. In the core of my being, I always been who I am. But it was the moment where like, let me just wait for the time that will be right. Because I was told this when I was little. He said the time will come.
And now you reference the beings of light. Are these your guides? Are these your teachers? Are these the messengers of information that you validate within your own experience?
Yes, yes, and it has changed through time too. Because at the beginning, I would just say, imagine it's like when you go to school, and at the beginning you have the kindergarten teachers, the ones that I describe as the beings of light. As time has passed, let's call it the communicate or the connection is less of there's someone out there, and become more unified with, we can call it God or source or
That
whatever, Tao. See, because it's, I guess you as you mature and I guess get to deeper understanding, deeper connection, deeper realization. Now the teachers also change, and the teaching change, and everything just, so in my last near that experience that I had 2 years ago, it was very, very, very profound, Sam, because before I had that experience, I about a week before, first it happened in, I had a car accident first, but a week before that, I went to sleep and I had what you call a warning, to call it like that. And I went to bed and I felt the sense of dread, worry beyond, and it was this worry. And I am, because I consider, let's call it, this being so connected and unified. People call it empathy, people call it, I can feel what is happening around. And but I usually go say, this is belongs to this person, or this belongs, and it vanishes, it just goes away. This time I said this belongs to whatever, whoever are out there. It didn't go away. It didn't go away. It didn't go away. No matter what, which practice I did, which meditation, it didn't go away. I'm like, whoa, this is, let's call it, this is a challenge that is coming. Because another thing started to happen for me was I started to receive messages saying a challenge is coming. But this time the voice didn't come like that. It was just this profound worry. And I woke up, I tried to do my practices, nothing. I fell asleep for a couple of hours, woke up 3 in the morning, and it was that I even woke up with tachycardia. So I'm like, wow, this is a big one. Something really big is happening. And then I heard the voice, and it was a very powerful, it's this kind of voice that shakes everything. And when I heard the voice, it said, do you trust me? And the moment I say, yes, I do. But why? Because why I say yes, I do, because it's the voice that embraces everything. Is this that you really truly trust? And when I say yes, I do, tachycardia gone, worry gone, everything gone.
Isn't it interesting? I mean, what I really get people to understand is this physicality that you speak of is the misdirection, and most people will run straight to WebMD and start validating what they're experiencing as something that is on a physical in its nature, and it is not.
Not. So the moment I just say, and all the practices I do and that I share with people involve that, how you become the master of, like you were saying, I call it the master of the wave, the surfer of the wave. I teach people to become the surfer of the wave. And then those were all the practices I was doing. And then, yeah, when I say I trust, it was all gone. And it's when I heard the words, you are in sync with God. And I entered again in that state of, and I was there sitting for hours. And the first thing I did when I got out from the bed, that it was even the going out of the bed without leaving that state, I went to water the plants, because the sense was like, be with nature. And I went to water the plants, and when I looked at my hands, these are the hands of God. But when I say these are the hands of God, I'm not thinking Ingrid.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's hands of God. There's no Ingrid. This is incredible, because when you're in that state, there's no identification with certain thing.
Just as I spoke of earlier, that's how I obtain an alteration of the 3D reality, is to access that state of consciousness.
Yes.
It has no place, no name, anything. And so I
Nothing.
don't, as a universe, I'm not asking myself, excuse me, universe, please, I'm in the lotus position. I put 3 incense together. I need my son's lip to disappear. I need it now. I need you, please call my angels. Let them come down. No, as the universe, I'm not asking anyone anything. Heal, 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 done.
Yes.
That.
You are that. You are that. And then at that moment, I heard like that passage from the Bible. I'm not of the scripture of this religion or that. When any teaching comes, it comes from any scripture. And it started to say, at the beginning, it was the sound. At the beginning, it was the voice. At the beginning, it was the creation. And the voice of the sound was with God, and the sound was God. And then the word, at the beginning it was the word, and the word was Then I started to hear, in the beginning it was the flower. So I'm looking at this flower, and the flower was with God, and the flower was God. And he said, in the beginning it was you, and you were with God, and you are God. So I'm in this. So I was in this state of being for days. And it's not like people think you will go to your cave and not move. No, you're in connection with everything. I could be with my husband, with my son, with everybody. You are in this state of expansive connection. And then a week after that, I was in a tremendous car accident. And a car hit us from behind, and our car was total. My husband knew how to maneuver the wheel. We ended up next to some trees, the car destroyed. And I'm in the car, son, and I'm like, nothing is happening. And then I'm in the car, and we didn't know what happened, why this person hit us. And people that was driving behind thought this person was drunk. So the first thing we heard when the person stopped in front and everybody stopped there, this guy is drunk, and everybody's angry and everybody's confused. And I am in the car, and then I'm tied by the belt, and it would just fell in the body. I felt that it had burned my body. But I'm sitting in the chair, and I am experiencing absolute and complete compassion. And I said, people, I wasn't thinking compassion. I was the embodiment of compassion. So as everybody is worried, angry, cursing, I am feeling compassion for everything and everyone. And even before I knew what happened with that guy, he came out of the car, he's walking, and I'm pouring in compassion. And then I heard that he fell asleep on the wheel. And that's why the whole accident happened. And then this day I didn't want to go to the hospital. I thought I was fine. Next day, and I ended up in the hospital. But everything was fine. Even if the body was hurt, everything was fine. So, but because of the accident, I had this very bad, I was already having some problems, some physical problems, and I wasn't really wanting to have a surgery that they were saying I needed to have, the doctors. And because of the surgery, I had a bleeding that lasted for 15 days. I had to get into this surgery, but I also was guided to meet the right doctors.
Mhm.
And I guess this experience that I had to happen. I didn't even question it. It was like, so I met these doctors, and now I knew. I said, you have to monitor my blood pressure. You have to. And then the doctor called the anesthesiologist because I was so on it. And
Is
when
it?
they came,
I was going to say, so the reference of the cardiac sort of like evidence of complication, was it resolved?
I knew that. And every time I go under general anesthesia, is I guess I have had some kind of let's call it a spiritually transformative experience. I guess that moment is like, oh, I'm out of this shell. I guess that passage to come out. I don't know. It's like pretty easy to just detach from the body. From my first near-death experience, I was detached. I was detached. We didn't talk about it, but when I was little, I was detached from my persona, my parents, my name, everything. I never gave name or form to the being so light because I didn't need to have names or forms or nothing. It was like, what are you talking about? And when the being so light, I was in that state. When I was little, one day they were calling me for dinner, and they said, Ingrid, and I said, Uish, don't call me like that. And when the lady came, we're calling you for dinner, Ingrid, and said, that's not my name. Don't call me like that. She said, what is your name? I say, I do not need one. And it's when the being so light later explained to me, yeah, names are not needed in the realm of the light. But also I understood names and all that are needed in our physical experience, human experience, so that's okay. But it's like in the depthness now. And when I gather with thousands of beings of light. They didn't need to show any face or nothing, and I knew who was talking. I knew who was communicating, and it's just incredible.
Well, this is, this is part of, always remember with the audience's realization is everything is an experience for you. So what I tend to find is a lot of people, once you get past this 3D reality, and I've got a reputation for jumping the fourth and fifth dimension, but let's just use this as an idea of how to define consciousness, because we don't need to, but let's just say it's a moving of a gear stick to realize something greater, an ascension per se. That ascension, void of time and space, realized within this state, can, I've explored many dimensions, dozens and dozens.
Yes, yes.
But it again, once you are this consciousness that we constantly speak of, Ingrid and I, it's sort of, within Taoism we call it a diamond, and consciousness is just another facet of the diamond, and it's never ending. It is never ending.
Yes.
And understanding that from that humanist experience, and you tapped into compassion. It's sort of like, again, what I like to remind people of is all these emotional states are nothing more than a human being experience. So even love. So people are like, oh, but this is the correlation. I mean, 30 years ago when I first tapped into Lao Tzu, who's the father of Taoism, the guy who transcribed the Tao Te Ching, who's my personal teacher and guide on a second-by-second basis and has been for 30 years. And so that goes way deep into another understanding. Just as you have the light beings, I have Lao Tzu, but he's sort of very vivid. He sits in the room. He's sitting right here, right now. And he's as tangible and as vivid as you are in this camera. So there's a level of transmission that materializes him within a 3D reality, and of course then can instantly transmute to a higher frequency of just pure light. But understanding this level of consciousness that Ingrid speaks of. And so when I talk about it from a Nigong perspective, and I just spoke on my child getting a fat lip, shifting that three-dimensional change instantaneously from flesh and blood, transmitting it, and through the spoken word, invoking physicality, returning to the default, which is perfection, and you see it happen before your very eyes, you go, oh, wow, how is that possible? And then, you speak on this incredible compassion that surged through you, even though this person almost killed you. And so you have this sort of thing. And I kind of like take the emotional part. You teach people to take the emotional part, put it to the side. And so I'm a little bit more mastered in these the movement of personality to complete consciousness. And so, for example, just the other day, we were driving, my wife and I, with my kids, and I got pulled over because I was like supposedly doing 5 miles over the speed limit. And it was a stretch of road that you really didn't realize that, you're going. Anyway, so my personality is like, really? So this police officer walks up and it's a car full of people. So he gets a little, he's programmed to be fearful.
Mm-hmm.
So he walks up to the side of the car and requests us to wind the windows down so he can see how many people are in the car. They're my children strapped in. That's great. My wife, excellent. And my personality was just not having it that day. I was like, are we done? So what seems to be the problem? And he was like, you were speeding and you were over the limit. So I need your license and registration. I said, is there any particular reason why in your mind right now you have the need to put your hand on your firearm with the idea that maybe you might draw upon us? Because I read people's thought forms all the time. And he was just like, this is sort of a little apprehensive, wouldn't you say? And the fact that you are constantly immersed in fear and your anxiety drives your very essence of who you are. And he's just like, I'm really not having or entertaining this infantile behavior today. And that's when my wife's like, Did you really go there? That's like 1000% your personality. You just went there, didn't you? And you see, this is where you have these profound moments of being able to shift between dimensions. Now, the magical aspect of consciousness within that same construct was I shared my personality, but I was already had the infrastructure of a different manifestation. And with that, confronting his
Mhm.
personality with the intention that he was going to give me a ticket, with the intention that he had thoughts of drawing his firearm upon the whole family. He went to his car, came back, and he said, I'm sorry. Here, take this as a warning. Excuse me, sir. I really apologize for interrupting you. You're
Mhm.
Please don't spit again. Now, that is a state of consciousness that comes from an understanding of how to shift and
Yeah.
what Ingrid is talking about. And your light beings, I notice you tap into them however you want to look at it. You're sharing and absorbing the guidance and information on a minute by minute basis. Perhaps maybe that's not how you define it, but you're coming to these realizations.
And
Um,
yeah.
do you now have a more clear um, channel, let's just use it, for this pure source information now, so many years later, several years past an NDE? Are you using this as a more of a more clear guiding force for your reality right now?
Yes, yes. And like you say, at the end of the day, everything is perception when we talk about the level of the mind. When I'm even telling you, I'm had the experiences of, like, let's call it a moment of what the mind would describe as now or love. Remember, when I mentioned to you, the mind would say, "Ah, that is what people call love. That must be what people call God." It has to give it it's all a matter of perception. See, so I love that you say that, because at the end there's not words, so the mind has to somehow enable to transmit this experience, which the mind even feel as experience, because there's not experience. It's just presence, but the mind has to feel it or think it as experience, and have to give it a name. This has to be, and that's how the mind said it. This has to be what people call love. See, so that was incredible. So I just bringing that point. But also, yeah, like this communication with the beings of light had changed through time. Even when I was little and I had access to what we call spirits or other beings, guides, other kinds of things. And my mom thought that I was actually seeing angels. And I
Well,
told her,
there's plenty of them in your field right now. Where they sort of morph in and out. They're like gold covered, like divine beings that
yeah,
sort of mutate between gold and white light, and that's sort of like very evident in your field.
they do. And since I was little, the first one that shaped itself was a gold one into human form. And I say, oh, you are a being of light.
You
And
see,
that's
these
how,
are this is the moments where you go, hang on a second, how did he even see that or know that? This is the connection of frequency that we
yes.
speak of. This
Yeah.
is that correlation of it. It's like
And
so
you
profound.
see them here when we do these kind of talks and you experience it yourself, they gather because
Mm.
they want to be part. They become also the light that we're sharing with. It's a light transmission. And they get, it's like almost like let's get the popcorn, and they all gather together, and it's like these big gatherings happen when we get these kind of connections. And yes, you're very right, they appear is almost like white silverish, and I have realized that when more of the white silverish appear, I'm having, I call it high order wisdom. So it's like at that moment it's like just transmission of
It's
like,
so interesting because within my teachers, the three pure ones, which are the keepers of the cosmos, the creation of the cosmos, right? So they're a transmutation of all things consciousness, giving people a realization of the nature of the universe. And so they come in immortal form and also transmute into physical form, but they are, you know, this is within Taoism we call it the upper dantian. It embodies the sun, and it also holds the light, and is reflection. This particular element is gold, and then you have the middle dantian, which is embodies earth, and it's a reflection of information, and that is a combination of platinum and gold. And then finally, the lower dantian embodies the moon, and that's a reflection of energy, magic, and all things, the combination of yin and yang as one materialized. So within the Gong practices, we go deeper in separating the electromagnetic polarity of duality and immerse ourselves into the magnetic fluidity that is pure source energy.
I like when you talk about that, you know, what it brings to me, because the teachings I have received come in many ways: visions, feeling, seeing, sensing, all different. Just imagine, I have seen beings of light that had eyes all over themselves. I have seen all kinds of beings. And I have even perceived myself as liquid light. I say liquid because it's liquid. It was
Mercury.
like, yeah. And even when I met a group of beings of light, it depends on the teaching, the moment. My, let's call it, physical body went down, like in a state of like, I was down in the ground, and the liquidy body stood up. And I was given a gift by let's call it ascended master, a being that was a very high order, because it just have, this is incredible because there's no hierarchy, but there's this sense of evolution. These beings very evolved. It's all transmission of knowing. And then this being had a jewel. Yes, and this jewel, he called it an octahedron. Even when I heard the word octahedron at the beginning, I didn't even know what that meant. I thought, you mean an octagon?
Yeah.
And he said, no. And he said, with this jewel, you can know the scriptures. With this jewel, you can know. But it wasn't this happened twice with this group of ascended masters. The first time they gave me the jewel. The second time when I stood up as liquidy form, this master grabbed the jewel and put it in my chest. Like that, it went inside, and it spun it again, like opposite or counterclockwise. And it said these words. It said, everything that has been done can be undone. And it's when there was this moment where I would just say, I call it like, say that you have your closet full of garbage. I don't know. I said, when you have all this stuff for many lives packed there, whatever. And it was the moment where he says, everything that is there is going to get cleaned up. And he says, your inner work starts now. That was years ago. But it spun it. And he was like, oh. It's when I felt like this opening of the heart chakra, of the center. And this started a complete new process in my spiritual path. But things like that happen. But I want to finish sharing with you that last near-death experience, because what happened there was very interesting too. Again, yes, this connection with what we call teachers, guides, beings of light have been changing and evolving through time. And during this last near-death experience, the doctors listening, and then they were monitoring my blood pressure. And during the surgery, that's supposed to be a simple surgery, my blood pressure dropped, just as I had told them that. I didn't say, but I just say monitor my blood pressure because something is going to happen. My blood pressure dropped, and I entered into hypothermia. Incredibly, when I had my first near-death experience, I experienced hypothermia too. And then I enter into this state, but this is the things, and because I guess it's the state of awareness, conscious awareness. When the moment I enter in that state, it was different than before, that I would just see my mom, the dog, the park. No, I was directly in the light. So that's different too. It's like, okay, let's cut with all that. And I was already in the light. But this was the first time from the other experiences that I was asked if I wanted to stay or I wanted to come back. And I was asked, the moment it says, you want to stay, I was in that heaven. That's why I say, that's why people call it heaven. It's like, oh, of course I want to stay. Of course I want to stay. And then I heard the words, oh, you want to go back. So similar to my first near-death experience, in that one, I wasn't asked anything, but it was that sense of the mind, the ego mind, making the decision. Of course, I'm not going back to that body. Oh, that body suffers. I don't want to be there. But it was when later the being light said to me, that was not your decision to make. There was already a high order decision made. Or maybe I was part of that decision, but not the ego. And they said, there's decisions that are not the ego. The ego is just right there to the side. Same thing here. At that moment, it was like, of course I want to stay. But it came this, wait a minute. That was amazing. When in that state, I was like, wait a minute. Is this a test? But I didn't feel that anyone was testing me. Everything is, this decision is a decision of a universal decision. It's all there. And this is not the judgment of someone is asking me, is a test. No, it's like, is this a test? And then I said, if God is everything, and if God is absolutely everywhere and all there is, where is here and where is there? I said, there is no here and there is not there. I am wherever I am already home. And the moment I said this, same as that other experiences when I had experienced that complete state of, let's call it oneness, there's no judgment. So at that moment, there was not even thinking my son, my husband, all my life, nothing. There's nothing. There's only knowing that everything is all right. If I'm back or not back is indifferent. Nothing. It's like everything is in perfect order. Nothing is happening. And then is when the first words that came to my mind after that was, keep me where I can serve God the most. And only at that moment was when that sense of like, oh, my husband, my son, the life, like an anchor was formed. And Ingrid, personality, Ingrid aspect was able to land in this seemingly different thing, but it's like knowing that home is not a place. It's a state of being.
Now, do you address that with your physicality? Like you have your own obstacles within your physicality. Do you address that from a nourishing perspective, more a cultivation thing, realizing that this is a vehicle for this experience? So, like within Taoism, we use the cultivational practices to nourish the flesh as that vehicle and anchor so that you can extend this re-up. And so that's the fundamental difference between Buddhism and Taoism, which people don't realize. They're like, it's the same. They're oh, we love the universe. It's all thing. No, 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 no. Actually, it's vastly different. So Buddhists look at life as a pile of dirt covered in diamonds, and they remove another diamond looking for more dirt. They want the pain and suffering realized within the humanness, and they're not so concerned about this vehicle. Take it or leave it, toss it. I know I can re-up. I'm going to the next one, and that's sort of a hard, sobering reality, because you sort of stay within this. I need to get all this pain and suffering out of the way for me to realize a higher ascension. This is sort of like the nature of Buddhism, whereas Taoism is it's like the glass half empty, the glass half full. Taoism is a pile of diamonds covered in dirt. We take off some more dirt and find another diamond and go, oh yeah, another amazing day being who I am as
Oh,
one
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And so, that nourishing aspect, everyone comes in with constitution. So you come in with a constitution that you're born into this reality with. The thing that people gravitate to Taoist inner alchemy is because you can re-up this physical body and change the trajectory of what might be seemingly a limited timeline, and you can start extending that at a much higher rate. So let's just say you and I were conceived and born into this reality. Out of a battery of 100%, you were given 80%, I was given 70%. That's my constitution.
Mm-hmm.
That's my very baseline of essence of how I come into this reality. Then, of course, from that constitutional line through Taoist practices, you re-up the battery to 100%. And then you go from 100%, you can go to 1,000 to 2,000. And then, of course, within the practices of that you and I immerse ourselves in, where the realization that you are all things is where people, a lot of light workers, healers, massage. I've got so many students, doctors of medicine, Chinese medicine doctors, psychologists, therapists, you name it, chiropractors, functional medicine doctors, acupuncturists, whatever it is. I've seen it all. They've all turned up on the doorstep of reality. There's nothing more powerful than energy. To materialize this consciousness, how do you keep that nurtured within your reality? Your consciousness, your realization you're not this body, but do you want this body to continue being the vehicle? And if so, what would be a practice that you use to nourish that, understanding that you've been through your own limiting sort of like realization of the physicality? Does that make sense?
Yes, and it's funny because learning from Buddhist teachings, Hindu teachings, all the different teachings, it's always this idea: you're not the body, you're not the mind. But guess what? At the same time, you are the body and you are the mind. See, you are not, but you are. So for many, many, many years, I wanted to die because I wanted to be out there. I wanted to be somewhere else because I had had those near-death experiences and many, many out-of-body experiences and many spiritual experiences. And it was the sense I want to go there until I realized home is here and now. The kingdom of heaven is here and now. And all these colors that light went through that prism are divine. And like you say, I just have to dig deeper, peel the layers of dirt, and the jewels are there. So it shifted the way I completely perceive things. And it was like the knowing this is a temple. And now it shifted in the sense like before I wanted to leave, now I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. Because this and whatever is being given here for the purpose of Ingrid being here is a temple, is a jewel. And whatever I can do through this experience to peel more layers and serve for others to peel them, I'm all game. It's like less. So it completely changed. So now that nurturing comes in like, how can I just keep doing the practices
And
That
how do they serve you? Because on an auric field level, there are definitely deficiencies, and this is only my perception for this second, but the first three energy centers that you would materialize as like chakras per se are very, very faint, which has different correlation. And there's a lot of excess within what you would define as the heart chakra. And then everything above that is just pure white light. So, I mean, which is a very clear indicator of where you are in your own realization of who you are. So it's kind of like, oh, I could be out of here and I'm good, but there's also a lot of there's a if you're in the path of wanting to realize this physical body as a tuning fork and an anchor, there needs to be some type of like relief from this energy center, because it's very excessive. It's very excessive, and it presents itself with physical traits of limitations.
yes, yes. And you know, the work I do now is like, because I have, let's call it like, of course there's not like the steps like that, but with sometimes we can try to give like in a school there's first grade, second grade, third grade. So I just know that we, let's call it three different phases of awakening, to say something like awakening of the mind. Oh yeah, I'm more than my body, more than my mind, I'm more than this physical reality. Wow, yeah, that's clear. The awakening of the heart. Wow, which is that feel, sense, connection, like, and now is the work of the awakening of the grounded being. How now can I bring all this and walk it? And that was part of what my last near-death experience brought. How can I not just be a self-realized being, but self-actualized being? And I started to do practices that were more guided of how can I cultivate my lower chakras, and practices in like, wow, I know I have a garden, but guess what, I didn't water the garden and the dirt was dry. How can I cultivate the dirt? Because without that dirt there's not a strong root. And I
And
could
that,
have a tree with beautiful branches and a beautiful trunk. And well, but if the root is not good, this tree is going to fall eventually.
well, yeah, it's kind of like a balance. So when I look at your aura, the basic the way I teach people how to read auric fields is there's 5 elements, and it starts with the spleen, the liver, the kidneys, the lungs, and the heart. And so within those organs, you can see the inner like ecosystem of what's really going on. Then that transfers to the more you know traditional energy centers that people would be familiar with, like chakras. So, but they're the fundamental ebb and flow of how that sort of works within your physicality. And so these are things that are, all the goal of a Taoist is to obtain the virtue over the emotion. So all these emotions are stored within your physical. This is something that has been realized through Chinese medicine, from the Yellow Emperor creating it. But I mean, it becomes realized and understanding how people perceive their reality, and then those emotions are then transparent in your 3D humanness. So these things come up, and so that type of stuff, when I'm looking at your aura, is there's you're not saying, I'm not sharing anything with you that you don't already know, but it's
Mhm.
really powerful. I think it's also a great validator for yourself when someone else who's a peer within the same space can identify and see these things, and then we have a free flow of communication that you can always lean on me if you're looking for other things, or vice versa. I can lean on you to help understand or nourish these sort of like things, because there's definitely that excess. So when it's excessive, and it seems to be excessive from the spleen, then it rolls over to actually the liver, and then we go up to the lungs, and then ultimately it's having a transmuted effect on the heart,
The heart, yeah.
which is a real big issue. I don't know how this happens. This happens every podcast. I have no idea what's going on. It's like poof, weird stuff. But I think that most important is you can identify with these things. Now, within Taoism, we have the keepers of these organs. So the heart is the red phoenix, the liver is the green dragon, the lungs is the white tiger, the kidneys is the turtle and snake, dark blue, midnight blue turtle and snake. And then, of course, the spleen is the earth energy. So connecting with that, that's why there's so much excess, which then materializes in an emotional state of like anxiety. This sort of transpires into this. Does this make sense?
It does complete,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And this part is becoming more educated and starting even it's just very recent for me, Sam, that in reality I started to make the connection with the body again. For many years it's like I could you could, if the light would have said you want to leave now, oh yeah, I'm ready. Like any moment, I'm like, oh, of course I am. And it's not that I don't love my family, my son. No, it's like it's so incredible and so detached that even from the time I came to this world, I didn't feel the sense of eating or drinking or nothing earthly. I didn't want earthly possessions. I didn't want a body. I didn't want anything to do with the material aspect of reality. And then I had to actually grow into it and have these experiences, including the last near death with a surgery, to finally start realizing there is not separation. There is not this or that. There's that. Everything is a manifestation of consciousness, and everything is pressure, and everything is divine.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, and as you can see, just starting, and it's been recent, just I would just a couple of years where I started to do the work of how can I nurture and root and balance
Well,
this.
that's where one of the reflections of that spleen is the absence of grounding. See,
Yes.
so that because that then reveals all the OCD, neuroses, anxiety, that then is the catalyst for other emotions, and it just keeps moving around. And so, you
To
know,
the point that when we're not rooted, we think why there's all this challenge in people wanting to ground or root me, because you need the grounding and the rooting from outside. And when you feel it that way, you create resistance because it's not your ground, it's being imposed in you. So it's like, why people try to control or do, or until I understood, oh, I get it. The grounding for me is coming from the sources outside of myself, until I have to learn to do that grounding from within, little by little. And it's been a process. Yeah, it's been like how we hooked this for years. I said I was like in a cloud, like a helium balloon. Now that need a little cord that tied it to this reality. So it's been, yes, the process of learning to ground and learning to, and also it was many people in the spiritual path can take their use their spirituality against themselves. You say, if I feel, then I'm not spiritual. If, or I am like the material things, I'm not spiritual. If I this, I'm not spiritual. And for a while I was even myself thinking, if whatever, I'm not spiritual, until I'm like, no, this is, and this is the
again,
sentence how I use for everything. I said, what is in the way is the way. So whatever is the feeling, this, I can use this to fuel my awareness. I can use this to fuel my awareness.
well, you mentioned the Tao a few times, and within Taoism, we reference this: when you're at your lowest, you're at your highest. That realization. So when you think everything is the most deconstructed idea of everything that could be, this is where you're at the precipice of the most profound realization, and that all things that you could ever imagine will be reality. And so this is the deception of emotions. That frequency then just does all these weird things to you where you get sidetracked. You're not in this present moment because, as I remind people, the universe has no moral compass. The words, just as we reference, as Ingrid reminded us many times during this podcast, nothing has title. For it to be realized, there is no title. Spirituality, materialization, all these types of things are realm of man constructs. And when they're dissolved, the universe, Tao, God, Buddha, Allah, whoever you refer to as the highest conscious frequency, does not care if you have $1 billion in your bank account, or you like, collecting Lamborghinis, or your favorite pastime is the Christian Louboutin store, or you want more, want more golden rings than Mr. T. That doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. And so, most people aspire to this. They look at someone and they go, wow, look, the top 1 percentile, they're so connected, they're able to manifest. Yes, they're manifesting one facet of their realization, and that's really powerful. They just know it, right? Abundance, to be abundant, you must live in abundance. They are able to access that frequency, but then you find them throwaway comments like, having money is not all things, and don't be dissuaded by money. Money is not it's the root of all evil. And again, more realm of man construct, more deconstruction, more sidestepping, more false readings of what should be, because that person is very deficient in many other categories. They've just synchronized themselves in one facet of consciousness. And so people are like, I want. And it's like, you can want as much as you want. I want you to have all things that you desire within the very essence or core of who you are. And you can materialize that. Well, look at that. Ooh. You can materialize that at will. And that's the whole point of it. But once you ascend and you realize you are all things, a lot of this stuff becomes irrelevant. And you go, oh yeah, look, I just checked. I got $47 million in my bank account, but I'm all about, the present moment. And that's beautiful. And that's the whole point of it. There is no right or wrong. There's no up or down. But, a lot of these people, the people that are in lack of are working the simulation of duality. And that's where they get caught. They don't realize that they don't have to live that way. This is a lie. This is all a lie. And, this is why Ingrid is, very obsessed and is cultivating these other energy centers within her physical body, because, she likes being all things, and to a point where, the body is not really on the equation of that much importance. Now, with that said, you've come to your own admission and realization that, hey, look, I do want that anchor. I still want to experience more things. This reincarnation, this incarnation, however you want to define it, is still valuable to me. And so I can re-up on my consciousness as I'm going through this, if that makes sense.
Yes. I love when the beings of light say things like, nothing is happening, but everything is happening. So it's that part when we realize that it all depends what we want to identify with. So it's just this amazing play of life. And I don't know if we are frozen.
It definitely looks that way. You have a beautiful smile, by the way. So, but we can hear you, which is fine. But it's interesting how these when we connect our frequencies. How are you there, Ingrid?
I am here.
Yeah, there you go. Look at you. You're playing David Blaine right now. Back and forth.
I tried to stop my camera and put it back, but it's still there, like kind of frozen.
Well,
but yes,
I want to concur in this realization. So, what we might do is, because I definitely want to do this again, but I don't want this to be the be all or end all. What I will say is, before we end today, I have a question for you that I ask many people. What is your definition of consciousness?
Let me see if can you see me now? I don't know, like
Now you're just pure darkness, which would be there. You go. Look, we got you. Hey.
I'm back. But just a quick thing before I answer your question. There was when I asked the being so like why my first near death happened when I was so young. They said because you were old enough to remember, but young enough not to be conditioned yet. And that when you're talking about everything is like you just that pure presence, consciousness without all the conditioning.
And I imagine, did you approach that with your child? Did you say you have a son? You have a son?
Yes.
You
Oh,
know,
yes.
this is how I have 6 kids, so I share that with all of them in the present moment. As you know, people go, "Oh, gurus, they're acting like child. They're like actually children." It's like, be childlike in your nature and have all things realized.
And you start being that way. The more I realize my, let's call it the true nature, the more in you peel the layers. I don't even call it evolution. I call it you're actually taking away all of it. More childlike you feel. It's this childlike energy in awe of everything, but at the same time in awe and not in awe because everything is like, but you just, I don't know how to even use words. You
Well,
just so
well, I mean, you become present. You become
present.
present.
You're present.
Just yeah, that childlike nature, and I mean, some would attribute it to more understanding the brain waves. We could go there. It's like,
Yeah, with all that. But the other thing with your question, there was a moment where the being solar showed me a room like this, and they said, "Tell me something in the room that never, ever, never, ever changes." And I was like, of course, the space in the room, the space in the room. And then the analogy goes in, what are you identifying with? The furniture in the room or the space in the room? When you identify with the furniture in the room, you become the puppet of your reality, the narrative of that reality. But when you identify with the space in the room, you are that presence. You become the creator of your reality.
yeah, it sounds like you've been on my website. No, I'm kidding. As I always say, master, keeper, creator of reality. It's like, whoa, isn't that interesting? The frequency,
It's
but
just,
it really is. I mean, and
and to give you quick another of those teachings when you ask me, because when you ask me what is giving words of what consciousness is it's so reducing. But imagine this teaching. One day I woke up in the middle of the night and then I see a lake, and the lake is completely peaceful, that element of water. And then I'm looking at this lake, like when you see this piece and you're like, oh, this is good. And there's a being of light with a rock in the hand. And he's showing me the rock, and I look like, do not disturb the piece, because I felt his intention. And then the being of light grabbed the rock and tossed it in the water. What was my expectation? The water is going to get disturbed when he drops this rock. The moment he dropped the rock, nothing happened. Nothing. And then the teaching, it was like the water can sense the rock. It doesn't mean it cannot sense it. It doesn't get disturbed. And the being said, that's the way someday you're going to be. Where no matter the rock, you are in sync with everything.
That is so profound. Which leads me to what I condition people in, like we spoke on that last experience that I said I mentioned, is being able to put your emotions aside and be at one with all things. And that is a state of consciousness, and it's repeatable. So when Ingrid talks about this is like, I, you literally, you know, I hate to sound so like regressive in the sense of plugging an app, but I do have an app that does exactly this. Which it's all about sound, right? So Ingrid will understand this. Everything that is a conductor of this electromagnetic field that you transmit within your physical body. I use sound, visual and audible experience, create a kinesthetic charge within the app that evokes a brainwave. And once you're in that brainwave, manifestation, magic, healing becomes realized. Now it's like, whoa, hang on, what are you talking about? But put it this way: you hit play, and you feel like you've had 5 days in the Bahamas with 10 pina coladas and a full body massage, and you've done nothing, because that's part of being present, that present moment. So instead of going, oh, I need to sit in the lotus position, I need to think about angels, someone told me I call in my guides, I've got to feel white light merging through my whole body, all these sort of like cues that Ingrid talks about that are not necessary, because you feel it. When you feel it, all this other nonsense that goes through this is irrelevant, because that is that validator. That is that realization. That moment that you mention, that, not the chair, the space. Oh, damn. Amen to you. And I'm just my priestly stuff. Amen. Amen, sister.
Yes.
So powerful what you said. And that is so in your situation, my situation, it's very realized, but in probably 99% of people, that's conceptual, and they cannot wrap their mind around what you're even saying. In of itself is like, it's a mind twister, it's a head screw. It literally makes you want to combust inside, because they've trained themselves. And when Ingrid talks about this childlike state, before you're programmed into what you believe is a simulation of your reality, you are, when you're childlike, you're able to alter and change the state you're in at will with the brain waves, because they're so slow. They're so slow. So, if I take my 5-year-old and go, hey, guess what? Barney's coming today, and Santa Claus, and Scooby-Doo. And they're like, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait for Scooby-Doo. I've always wanted to tell him how much I love his movies, because there's no veil there. There's nothing to be limited by. It just is that present moment, childlike, just as Ingrid said, the most profound thing that you could ever. It's.
And when like when the beings of light said to me, even with that experience with the lake, they said to me, why do you think that humans are made of 70% of water? They say, learn to keep your inner water calm. Like,
what a beautiful analogy. I love it. Well, it's not an analogy, it's a realization, yet people can associate the understanding of how healing water element is. Right?
yes.
And
you
that's
talk about
technically
sound. When you combine sound and water, wow, it's incredible, the transmission.
well, you transmit it, right? Like, I mean, for all the people that want to get all technical, it's just transmitting into the vagus nerve, Las Vegas nerve. Well, no, not really, but the vagus nerve, and that is the conductor of all the cells in your body, minus or plus your spleen, depending upon any scientific nerd that wants to argue the fact that it's not sympathetically innervated, that you can acquire that power dominance. But in reality, once you attune the energy, You are the master keeper creator of 50 trillion cells that are your flesh and blood before your very eyes. And then you move the energy any way you want, however you want, whenever you want. Hallelujah. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
But I mean, you're probably a little bit more used to that being on the belt there with Mississippi and all the rest of it. I love. There's nothing more exciting when I think where was it? It's been many decades, but I went and visited uh, uh, what is it? Um, Graceland. I don't know,
Mm.
Graceland. That's Memphis, but most people just associate us all the same. Mississippi, Graceland, New Orleans. They're vastly different, but let's if we were just to associate with that, there was just this incredible simplicity. And there's one thing I love more than anything is going to places of worship, all different kinds. I want to experience them all.
That's what I do too. I explore them all. I go. It's just incredible. But just one thing here, because you talk about abundance, and there was a moment in life when the beings are like do all crazy stuff, and sometimes they're like chill. It's a childlike. They make jokes, and it's so funny. And sometimes they share the teachings. Like one day there was the genie, like the genie then I could ask 3 wishes. And they said, what would you ask if the genie in the bottle was here and you could ask 3 wishes? And the very first time they did that, I people will ask for houses and cars, whatever they want to ask. I said, there's only 3 things I would like. And at that moment of my life, it was wisdom, compassion, and courage. That was my 3 wishes. And that was what it truly, it wasn't like, oh, there's log. No, I really, if you have wisdom, you know where to be, how to be, when to be. I mean, wisdom, the source of all knowledge, all of it. Yeah. If you have compassion, imagine like now you know how to give it, where to give it, this heart that can embrace and know the truth. And if you have courage, you can keep going in this path, because this path, and at the time that I felt it really hard and difficult. So that was my asking for many years. And you don't know your process, or you don't know where you are at sometimes until contrast or something show you that, oh yeah, now I am in a different place. And years pass, and one day, one night, again, like out of the blue, the genie in the bottle, and they said, if the genie in the bottle was here, what would you ask? And I said, 3 wishes. I didn't even have three. It was like, I don't have 3 wishes. Because this happening at 3 in the morning, your mind is not focusing anything, you're just pure awareness there. And then at that moment, I said, I only have one. And the only wish I had that came like this spontaneous, natural way was like, I wish absolutely everyone, it was not even my wish, it was an altruistic wish. It was like, I wish everyone would know the abundance that they are. I wish everyone will realize the abundance that they are. And when I wished this, it was like, at that moment, war would end, because there's not the sense of wanting anything from anybody. War would end, envy would end, that desire of wanting from others would end. And at that moment, I experienced how giving and receiving became one. And this is crazy to say, but that was one of them. I mean, it's not crazy, but it's just words are so sometimes hard to convey. But it's when I felt, this is the first time I felt the sense of knowing God. When that giving and receiving became one. Of course, there's nothing to receive, because you're the totality of everything. The sun always giving. Oh, what is to receive? You are everything. You are all. Just be. Be that. And when I ask the beings of light, what is purpose and what is mission? Because everybody always asks me those questions. I said, purpose is to remember that you are the light. No matter if you're a doctor, a mom, whatever you do in life, what career you choose, is your purpose is to remember that you are the light of consciousness. And your mission, to shine it. Shine that light. Be that. Be that. And when people ask me, but being means that you don't do anything, that you're just still and you don't do anything, I said, no. Stillness and movement are dancing together. Be that. And through that being, you know what to do. You know how to do it. You become response able. So that is that access. Be access. Be that you are. And the work here is through contrast. Go back to remember. Remember that you are through all these game. Some call it the game of lila. The playground of life. But how you play in a playground? Like a child. Be child. Yes. Yes, I love this sentence that says, God is simple, the rest is complicated.
It's so, when you say that, within the scripture, we have this very clear incantation. When you let the man who's never left the village, let him know he's seen the world, understand that all things are realized, and that true nature, that oneness that you speak of, I would attribute that infinity that you naturally just draw within the air as a realization of Wu Wei, effortless action. And so, you just allow to be childlike, allow all things, and, literally being done by the Tao, everything just instantly comes to you. And so that obstruction being your personality, your life experience, whatever, once that's dissolved, you literally will bear witness as the witness to the consciousness, which is a separation, but also a collective, is all things. So, you can be on your personality side, witness your consciousness, operate the whole thing. Or you can be consciousness and witness your personality, operate the whole thing. Or you can be both at the same time. Or you could be an amplitude, a multi-dimensional being, which is the premise of quantum physics and understanding of multi-dimensions, that you're operating simultaneously everywhere, instantaneously at once.
Sometimes, because this is another story, I have experienced the multidimensional being, and it was a very profound experience in which it was all by the sound. I can tell it quick. I went to sleep one night and I woke up by the sound of a bell. And when the bell sound, I woke up. And when I woke up, I'm like, oh, what is this bell? So I'm being that aware of the bell. What is this bell? And the bell sound again. And when the bell sound again, I woke up. Well, how can I wake up if I was awake? And the bell rang then again. And I woke up again. So I put the analogy of an ocean to make it understandable. And what I try to convey with this is, at the very first time I woke up, it's like I was in the very, 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 very deep part of the ocean. And when you think about the very deep, deep, deep part of the ocean, I don't know, 10,000 feet, whatever, at the very depth of the ocean, you do not know the surface. It's just the surface is up there. So when it took about 6 or 7 times for this bell, even I would just say it was like the fifth time that the bell chimed, that I is when I said, oh, there's something called Ingrid. Before that, there was nothing related with the personality of Ingrid, none of that. It was just pure consciousness. And as I woke up. So that my analogy with the ocean is that I only felt that was something called Ingrid at the level of the thermocline, when there's now some sense of the surface. And then I woke up again, and there was like the sense of non-physical reality. And then I woke up again, and it was like, oh, the last bell. It was like, oh, is there more? So I even, I experienced this multi-dimensional beingness of all levels of being, even with the physical, even with the Ingrid person, even with none of it. It was like,
That
wow.
that interestingly is obtainable. And I hate to bang a drum again, but I mean that's part of what Nigong does. That internal power makes it possible to shift through those dimensions at will, all at once.
Yes, for me, once I knew it and became aware, now I could do it at will. But first, in my experience, and it has been natural. I didn't do any practice for none of it. Like, all in my experience has been natural. Once I know it, oh, now at will, I have access to it. But before that, I didn't even know it, that was there. And once it manifests through me, I have had experiences where even I disappeared. And the being so light said, there always will be witnesses that can recount your experience. And I disappeared in front of, we were being robbed. So we were 5 people in the scene, and I wasn't there. And my friend was robbed. Everything was taken from him. And at the end, when the 3 men left, he's like, I said, he got a scratch. I said, oh my God, you're okay. You're all bleeding. They took all your stuff. And he said, I don't care about my watch. I don't care about the stuff. They could not rob you because you were not here. You were not here. So later I understood it from reading the scriptures of Patanjali and all the sages, what happened. But it's like all this in my experience was being spontaneous. But spontaneous in my experience as Ingrid, for this to happen, I've been practicing this for thousands of, in our trajectory of our spiritual evolution. Who knows how many times we've already done all this and did all the practices required. But I came to this, I said that Ingrid is a parenthesis in the eternity of who I am. This little parenthesis already in its structure knows all this stuff. So it's been bringing it, reminding me, look.
And
This is
that's yeah. I mean, we define that as shape shifting, right? Within Taoism, it's part of the transformational skills. One being shape shifting, become invisible, and I can attribute that to some level of consciousness when I take someone, and I instantly give them a reverse hallucination.
Yeah.
Where nothing is present. And it doesn't
Yes.
matter what you say, they can't see you, they can't hear you, they can't do anything.
Yeah,
And
in
so
the
that
Hindu
kind of
scriptures, that you remove the light, the
Mhm.
possibility, everything to be seen has to be a matter of absorbing or reflecting or projecting light, is kind of similar, but it's like you remove the possibility of the other person to, or the other group to
and
see.
that's part of magic.
Mm-hmm.
It's instantaneous, and you can shift these states of consciousness for any observer within this dimension at
Yes.
will. So
Yes.
when you say I was invisible, I know that to be a fact. I do it. I know it. And
Yes.
accessing it is something that is a trainable
Yes.
perception sensory perception. And so, you know, you shift that within all dimensions at will. And so, my goodness, I can't tell you how profound today has been, my friend.
It's been amazing.
It's been amazing.
Oh,
We have to do this again without question.
yes.
And in closing, after you gave me the consciousness, and so what are you doing? What's going on with you right now that you could share with the audience briefly before we finish this podcast? But I'm going to put all your social under this podcast so people know where to find you, which seems to be not what people do in social media, which I find very bizarre. So all these people take advantage of, say, perhaps you or me as a point of information. They use it to get their views on their channels, yet they refuse to share the information of the person who's on the channel. I don't know whether you've noticed this, but this seems to be quite common. I've seen this quite often. And I'm like, okay, so give me the purpose and reason why, you know, you wouldn't share other people's information. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed
Yeah.
this on the channel?
I was like,
Yeah,
what?
it's really weird. So, you know, a lot of people when I'm finishing up the podcast, they're like, I just want to get in where you can find me, because they're so traumatized by this type of behavior. Where
Yes.
me, the you fear nothing, you share everything,
Yeah.
and your gift is your offering, and that realization is about us coming together with consciousness. So it's like, for whatever reason, it's all about resonation, it's all about frequency, and your experience, your journey that you've shared with my audience is to help them level up their level of consciousness. And I want them to find you if they want to pursue whatever it is that's necessary that resonates with your messaging. I want them to do that. I'm not interested in the separation and absent of a pathway to find Ingrid, because there's some weird mechanism that people are having here in social media where they invite people on their channel, then they refuse to share their information, which I find absolutely perplexing and bizarre. My personality is speaking volumes right now. And so that doesn't make any sense to me. So, yes, share with the audience briefly what you're doing, where we can, the social will be under this video. Social media, I think you have Instagram and other things
Yeah,
also as well.
YouTube and my website and Facebook, all the normal
Oh, good, good,
ones.
good.
And then
And
I do one-on-ones, I do mentorings, I do speaking engagements, I do spiritual retreats. I'm about to do a spiritual retreat in Spain. I've been invited to Spain, and I've been invited to speak in Madrid, in Barcelona, in 3 different cities in England. I'll be in London, Oxford. I'll be in Prague also speaking.
beautiful.
So I'm. This is a
Well,
little trip
I'll,
through.
I'll invite you to. I'm having a consciousness expo here in Vegas in September. So I'm just finalizing a few little trappings of that, but I want to informally invite you to that. So we'll have to keep in touch with all that as
Oh,
it
I would love.
materializes. You know, you see, for me as a channel, and I do this all day, every day, have for over 30 years. A lot of the people that are channeling, like yourself, you may not consider yourself that, you didn't exactly define yourself as that, but you know, this information needs to be in front of the world. Everyone needs to get an insight. So for
Yeah.
me, I want to gather a panel of profound source energy, i.e., yourself, myself, and I want to get us all together and share this information with the world. And people are just like,
I would
I
love
can't
it. I would love.
understand. Yeah, I can't understand how a lot of this community is sort of really being, and I'm going to say it, my personality, um, exploited. This is what I'm identifying with. This is the energy. So they want to hear the freaky, obscene, you know, crazy stories that we have, because they're real, they're very tangible, and their audience wants to hear that. yet they don't want to share it with the world. They're not interested. Once you give me your near-death experience, Ingrid, okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah. And it's
You
like,
know,
no, there's so much more.
right,
There's
right, right. But it's
so
a very important that just this messaging, your experience, your realization is for other people to resonate with. And that's the sole purpose of my journey here in this reality, my reincarnation, is to bring the consciousness level to a whole nother level.
Yes,
And
that's what I'm trying to do too. And you know, when people ask me, "You are this or psychic or medium or this," and I said, "I'm just a vehicle. I'm just a messenger." A messenger. Let's
uh,
let it all flow through.
I love it. I love it. Well, I want to thank you, my friend, for sharing your time with the audience. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I normally, when I get to these type of incredible podcasts, I normally split it up into two parts. So people like to watch the whole thing. I find it perplexing when I look at my channel and I have these types of podcasts that are 2 hours at a time. People watch them, but even crazier. Not only on YouTube is sort of in its infancy, but on my podcast across all platforms, because we're on every platform. Thousands of downloads. And it's like, it just is what it is. People want to hear this stuff. They want to know more about
They
it.
do, and I think the inner is calling. You know what analogy the beings of light showed me for that? They just, again, they're funny. So there's the light in the porch one night, and they say, "Come outside and look at the bugs around the light." They say because people need the light. They're called for the light. It seems that they want to remember their own light. So when there's light, they want it, but not because it's us, but because that bring them to remember little by little that they are the light.
Thank you, my friend. I'm very grateful to the universe, to the Tao, to your light beings for bringing us together and creating a new incredible friendship and bond. This is
Yeah.
another profound day. Very
Oh,
grateful.
this is a really
Yeah.
good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ingrid. And once again, I want to thank my audience. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Qing. I will see you on the next one, guys.